Hello there. How are you doing this morning? I hope you woke up bright and eager to conquer the world. Now, do you know those moments or those people that you meet and you're just like, this person I gel with perfectly. And it's almost instant and you can't tell why. And then for others, you're just like, oh my goodness, I've had it. I call it quits. I don't want to see you. And it's not always easy to pinpoint why with some people you gel well so beautifully and with others, it's just a complete miss. But that's where personality types comes in. And here's a quick fact for you. According to the famous Myers-Briggs personality type indicator, no one personality type is best or better than any other. It isn't a tool designed to look for dysfunction or abnormality. Instead, its goal is simply to help you learn more about yourself. And when you know yourself, then you're able to interact well with other people. Now, our guest today is none other than Carol Irungu, and Carol is an accomplished facilitator and coach with vast experiences in corporate Kenya. And as a coach, she's been described as a paradigm shifter due to her ability to get individuals to move from inaction to action. Now, welcome, Carol.
Thank you.
Now, earlier, actually, she was even asking me, why is this of interest to you, Sharon? Why do you want to know? And I was just saying that in this world, you need to sometimes interact with people that you don't really care for or like or understand, but you still need to communicate.
Right.
So, Carol, where do we start? Let's start with, how did you get into the business of coaching and personal coaching?
I don't know that it was deliberate.
Yeah.
It was more a need to understand people. So when you're saying, kind of what makes people tick, why do you do the things that you do? Why do you act the way that you act? But that was always kind of like an interest for me. So I actually took some psychology classes at the college level.
Yeah.
And then when I got into training and facilitation, I was always puzzled by the fact that while people really enjoyed some of the programs that we ran, they didn't always do something about it. They didn't always transform themselves.
Yeah.
And so I thought, why don't I start to interact with people one-on-one and see what is it that keeps you from moving? Because I think you encounter a lot of people who say, I want this, but they don't get it. I want, I want to go, I want to be, I want to have, and they're not getting it. And the question is, what is holding you back?
Yeah.
And so that brought on the coaching one-on-one element.
So how would you say that personality types plays a role in one's ability to go after what they want? And how important is it to understand your own personality type?
Let me start with the second part of the question.
Okay.
Critical.
Yeah.
Understanding yourself is really the first step to gaining access to the things that you desire or knowing what is keeping you from getting to them.
Yeah.
And different personality types definitely behave and act differently when it comes to what they're looking for. So there'll be those who'll be the go-getters, what we call the type A's, and they're kind of like, I'm getting there, I'm going, I'm just, and then others who really want it and will get it, but in a different manner.
Okay.
So they'll probably not be as pushy and, like, I don't care who's in my way as long as I'm winning.
Yeah.
Others will be maybe much more considerate and more, in touch with other people and will still advance that.
Okay.
But at the same time, each of those personalities can self-doubt themselves out of not accomplishing what they want to accomplish.
Okay.
So, if that type A person kind of gets into this roadblock or they get overwhelmed or they will crash and burn and they might not get to what they want.
Yeah.
In the same way, some of the other more melancholic people will probably self-doubt, and question and analysis, paralysis, and never actually get to moving.
But the key thing that I'm hearing is that there's still that desire to go after the goals. It's just you go about it differently.
Differently, yes.
And is your personality type, is it nature or nurture?
I would like to say that nature plays a role.
Yeah.
And I'm saying this more from my own observations than, research
Okay.
or, but I feel like nurture has a bigger role to play than nature. And I'm not looking at nurture from, little kids kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it as your whole life. You're
Right.
constantly nurturing your personality. So you could be this person who's just like, I don't care about people, I just want to get what I want to get. And then over time, you realize that doing that gets you what you want, but it doesn't give you the people or the
Right.
support that you need.
So there can be a personality shift.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and you would make certain adjustments.
Okay. Okay.
To accommodate those other elements that you really want.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. What
yeah.
are the different personality types?
Boy, you talked about Myers-Briggs.
Yeah.
So Myers-Briggs.
Actually, I did a test yesterday
Yes.
because I was like, I need to know who I am before I sit across
Right,
from the coach. Yeah,
yes.
Carol.
And there are many different types of, Myers-Briggs is 16
Yeah.
different, depending on the four-letter code, extroverted, intuitive, perceptive, thinking, judging. And there's others, like I work with Insights
Yeah.
through Razor Resource Group, who I work with, and they basically follow the theory of a psychologist called Carl Jung.
Okay.
So Carl Jung came up with introvert, extrovert, thinking, feeling, intuitive, judging. So all the terms that you hear in
Yeah.
Myers-Briggs
Yeah.
have been appropriated and used to try and help us understand personality types. But there are many, we always encourage people do more than one, because there's so many different.
Okay.
There's the Windsor, there's the DISC assessment, and all of them pick a certain language
Yeah.
that then helps you. And that's part of the joy of doing different ones, is because one will say something and you're like, oh, I associate with that better than I did with the other one. I didn't quite feel this picked me
Okay.
up. Yeah.
Which one do you follow as a coach?
I normally use the Insights, and why I like the Insights is because it's color coded. So it's easier than trying to remember the four-letter codes from Myers-Briggs.
Okay.
I think the Myers-Briggs practitioners, they're like, I got this. I'm like, I can't remember. I can't even remember my four-letter code. But we have cool blue, fiery red, sunshine yellow, and earth green. And I find like those are really easy.
Cool blue.
Earth green,
Yeah.
sunshine yellow, and fiery red.
Can you quickly
Break it
explain
down?
which one?
Okay.
Yeah, what each is.
So fiery red, I'll use the Myers-Briggs language because
Okay.
you're used to that, and they're related. So fiery red will be extroverted and thinking.
Okay.
So that's their number one preference.
Okay. Can you just elaborate that a little in case someone
Okay.
doesn't know what the Myers-Briggs is?
Okay. So we define personalities based on how people. There's personality traits, which is about behavior, and then there's personality type, which
Okay.
is kind of who you are,
Yeah.
how you prefer to behave.
Okay.
What differentiates one from the other. So, and this is, sometimes we look at difference and we want to think ethnicity and religion and blah, blah, blah. But people are different more in personality than they are in those big things.
Categories, yeah.
So, for example, how do I think? Or how do I make decisions, right? And so when we talk about thinking and feeling, this we call the rational functions.
Okay.
Now, most people will think feeling is an irrational function,
Okay.
but no, it is a rational function. So when
Okay.
somebody says, I feel this way,
Okay.
that's how they are making that
I
decision.
see. And that's fiery red.
So fiery red, okay. So let me break them out
Yeah,
for you. So
okay.
think of a circle
Yeah.
with 4 quadrants.
Yeah.
Okay. The top hemisphere is going to be the thinking preference.
Okay.
Now you'll hear me saying preference
Yeah.
because you can do something about it. This is
Okay.
how I prefer to behave.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that
You are
the
stuck
other
there.
exactly
Yeah.
is inaccessible to me. It's just what I'm more comfortable in. It's like folding your arms,
Right.
versus doing the
The
reverse.
opposite way. It's just how
Exactly.
the
Yes, it's
natural
just
way.
how you
Yeah.
cross your legs is a preference.
Yeah.
So the top hemisphere is going to be the thinking preference.
Mm-hmm.
The lower hemisphere is going to be the feeling preference.
Okay.
Then, so that's north, kind of south.
Yeah.
Then east, west, we separate them again.
Yeah.
And we have the preference for introversion and extroversion.
So you could either be like
Thinking, yes.
Yeah, thinking
Extroverted
or feeling
extroverted.
Okay,
There you got it.
And that's how you break it down to cool blue,
Yes.
fiery red.
Earth green
Because some
and
people might just
sunshine
be like,
yellow.
I want to be fire.
Yes,
I
exactly.
want to be.
Yes.
I bet like you see people and you think fire is good.
Right,
but
and they always think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And I say, nothing wrong with it. We cook with it, it gives us heat, it also burns.
Yeah,
So
true. And burns out
Literally,
too.
yes,
and burns
exactly.
out.
And burns out,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now I want to paint a few scenarios, and you try
Okay.
and tell me. I'd like you to tell me which personality type they are. These people are. The first one is an individual at work who likes engaging in office dialogue, which ends up taking their working hours. Who would you say?
Probably sunshine yellow,
Sunshine yellow.
extroverted and feeling.
Okay, so
Yes,
very emotive.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
An individual who needs to talk out their feelings to a friend for several hours.
Earth green.
Earth green,
Yes,
and that is
introverted and feeling. So they'll
Introverted
go with
and
one
feeling.
person and they want to kind of unburden stuff.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
One who has several alarms set throughout the day so that they always stay on top of things.
Yeah.
They wish they could remember it all in order to save time,
Yeah.
but this is the next best thing.
Okay. Most likely cool blue.
Okay.
That kind of detailed thing. And they are thinking and introverted.
Yeah.
So kind of very meticulous about wanting to get many things done.
Okay.
Yeah.
And an individual who is happy to jump into a new relationship despite having their heart broken many times before.
Sometimes I draw the line in boxing people when it
Okay.
comes to relationships.
Relationships.
Right?
Okay. Okay.
And only because there's so many things that go into how we make decisions around relationships that I think, if somebody went around saying, I'm sunshine yellow, that's why I kind
Yeah.
of get into relationships even though I get hurt,
Yeah.
it just doesn't quite make sense.
Okay. So
yeah.
would you then say that it's important to not always really stick to what this says? If sunshine yellow says that you're supposed to be what's sunshine yellow again? Extroverted and feeling.
So very outgoing,
Yeah.
creative, innovative, kind
So,
of. Yeah.
so would you then say it's important to
Bubbly.
not really delve deep into this in case you start to box yourself into what you're supposed to be feeling and how you're supposed to
Yeah.
move through the world?
How I like to think about this is that we have our personalities, but we are also the result of our genetic makeup, our upbringing, and our environment.
Okay.
So a sunshine yellow who's gone through a difficult childhood, a difficult upbringing, maybe has observed quite a bit of pain, will not be so quick perhaps to jump into a relationship versus one maybe who had a really,
I hear
happy,
you.
normal childhood where people loved one another, and that person would probably jump in and out of relationships knowing there's a certain comfort and safety in a background that says you're always going to be loved versus one who's like,
you're not really sure.
Yeah.
We have to take a break, but I want to ask you one last question very
Yes.
quickly.
Yeah.
Diana, don't kill me. I want to know, can something that happened, can a trauma or a tragedy change your personality type?
Yes, it can.
It can?
Yeah.
Okay.
It can change how you behave.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll be back very shortly, and when we do come back, we're going to delve deeper into how your personality type can affect you in the professional space. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back. We've been talking to Carol Irungu, who is a professional coach, about personality types. And the first section, we were focusing more on what that is, discovering the different tests that you can take to know what kind of personality type you are. And now I want to understand how that can affect your professional life. Now, are there certain personality types that just cannot work together, that it's very clear that these two, you put them in a room, it's chaos?
There's an inference in that question that they would need to be opposites, but yes, there are people who cannot work together,
wait,
and
that's
it could
very
be that
interesting. Yeah.
that they're exactly the same.
Oh.
Yes.
And so would you then say it's important to pick either careers or these professional relationships based on your personality type?
Yes, I would like to say that, and at the same time, say that there's a vibrancy that comes from an environment that enables the different personality types to work together.
Okay.
Right. So I imagine, for example, if all of us in an office led or had a preference for cool blue energy, so we were all are meticulous, like to work on our own, and just do our work. It would be a really boring office environment, and we would clash around. No, you didn't get the data right. No, what is it? No, let me think about it. So there's all manner of things that we say. When you have the two similar, then there isn't life.
Yeah.
So there are, of course, those that just struggle to get along.
Yeah.
And it's just that you'll find, and this is now even like relationships at home.
Okay.
I like my things folded, color-coded, etc.
Yeah.
The other person kind of takes out stuff and drops
They're
it as
happy.
they go along.
Yeah.
That's what will drive you nuts. And those are, people who are like, oh, what's a big deal? And the one like, no, this is how I like my things done.
Yeah.
Now, once we start to learn to appreciate each other, what we call adapting so that we can connect, then I'm able to walk into your space and say, you know what, Sharon, I'm going to, fold my clothes because it makes you happy.
Okay.
And I want to have a conducive working environment.
Right.
And then you walk over to my side and say, you know what, I really enjoy that you bring so much enthusiasm into every conversation that we have. So am I going to be alert to the things about you that can irritate me? Yes. Am I going to, every now and then, disappoint you? Yes. But once we start to see value, then we work very well together.
I like that.
Yeah.
That it's not about being rigid and this is how I like it, so you go figure.
Exactly.
But to understand that you should be more accommodating and appreciative.
Yes.
Are some personality types more likely to succeed than others? This is a tricky.
I know.
I don't want to put you on the spot,
people
but
who are just like, oh my God, I'll never make it in life.
no, and I don't. Again,
know,
it's not
that.
definitive.
Yes, and so my answer is actually no.
Okay.
That every single personality can succeed. Now the question here is, how do you define success? Right?
Success in relationships, success in career, financial success, in motherhood, and there's different. So, okay. So, in this case, what kind of personality type is most likely to be president? Or can anyone take a certain role?
I think, if you look at, let me look at Kenyan presidents.
Okay.
Moi.
Okay.
Kibaki. Uhuru.
Yeah.
All really different personalities. All of them are president.
Oh, so career paths don't necessarily necessitate that you
and that's something, your ambition is not going to be driven by your personality type.
So you can find, for instance, people who are very introverted
and do what you do.
Yeah,
exactly.
And be out
exactly
here, which is what, if I'm being honest, which is what I know I am.
Yeah.
And I and people find it shocking that I'm not going to be like, after this I go into a corner and I just allow myself to release.
Absolutely.
How do you manage different personality types if they're more prone, for instance, to being gossipers, or if, and chatting a lot, or if some are really focused on work and being productive, and that's not necessarily your truth or your strength. So how do you literally move through the professional space when there's all these different personalities around you?
It's an interesting question, because we bring all manner of ourselves to work.
Okay.
So you could have somebody who leads with Earth Green who's a gossip, right? So again, I hesitate to kind of tie your personality type with kind of these traits, negative traits, behavior traits that we find with different individuals. But that's an important question from a perspective of how do you deal with those people in the workplace. And so that's around the culture that is created at that workplace, and how comfortable people feel and how safe people feel, and the amount of trust that there will be in that particular environment as well. But not to say that people will, if I'm that kind of person who needs to know everything that is going on, I don't know that it's necessarily because I am cool blue or it's because I am earth green. I think it's a bad habit that people will pick up along the way, and then continue to, and then because it's nice, because it's curious, it's because and so you almost have to figure out what are you gaining from that, because I find that everybody who's kind of not nice to be around, there's something that is being fed by that behavior. There's something.
But then how do you break that? And especially if that person is your senior, your boss, how do you break that? Or how do you even go about changing a company culture that's so different from what you're generally, what you're more inclined towards doing and your personality type? How do you?
I'll tell you, if you're not at the top of the company, it's kind of hard to change the whole company culture, but you can look at your own space. One of the programs we facilitate is the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and it talks about your circle of influence and your circle of concern. So circle of concern is things that are important to you but over which you have no influence. There's nothing you can do about it. They are important. You don't like the culture, you don't like that person gossips, but how much control do you have over that person? Versus circle of influence, your space, the things that I could come and speak to you, Sharon, and actually endear to have you see my side of things, and that starts to shift things a little bit. So I find that is more about proactivity, and if it's your boss, same thing. Why am I here? Do I have a mission I need to accomplish? Is my boss the person that I'm going to learn from? Then I will hang in there and not get focused on the negative elements of my boss, but instead the positive. If on the other hand it becomes really difficult,
then you can up and leave. So, and that's a good tip, like to really focus on the good. Are there other things that you could do when you're constantly knocking heads with either a different personality type or a similar one, the one that's too similar to you? Are there things you can do in the professional space?
Again, I'll think about the 7 habits because they're really key in terms of.
What are those
the 7 habits of
Maybe
highly,
we could like quickly
by
go
Stephen
through.
Covey. The first habit is be proactive. And that's, you're in charge of your life, so take charge of it. The second one is begin with the end in mind. So have a clear vision and mission for where you're going, and that is really, really critical because then it helps you diffuse short-term frustrations.
Right, because that doesn't matter.
Yeah,
That's
I
all
know where I'm
noise.
going. Exactly.
Yes.
I'm focused.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then habit 3 is put first things first.
Okay.
And so what are the important things in your life? What are your,
Prioritize.
exactly,
Yeah.
there you go. And so we call the first 3 habits winning the private victory.
Okay.
So that is
Within
you taking care of you.
Okay.
And that moves us on the maturity continuum from being dependent on other people to being independent. So you
Right.
stop blaming people, you stop accusing people, you start, it's
Yeah.
not about, hey, I'm just
Yeah.
going to do me.
You let go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we get to independence, and how do we once we've gotten to independence by really building on those first 3 habits, we then say, how do we get to interdependence? And interdependence then is really different. It's when it's a we versus you and I kind of trying to figure things out together.
Yeah.
And that's habit 4, which is think win-win.
Think win.
Think win-win.
Win-win.
Attitude.
Win-win.
Win-win.
Right. Yeah.
You win, I win.
Yeah, yeah.
Very difficult, but that's the magic.
Yeah.
Right? And then seek first to understand and then to be understood. And that's the hardest.
Oh, yeah, because
It's
you
the
have to
hardest.
stop,
Yep.
listen,
Exactly.
understand,
There you
and
go.
then allow yourself. And everyone wants to
Absolutely.
be heard
Exactly.
first.
In fact, we say the opposite of that is seek first to be understood and then to be understood again. And you hear it all the time. You didn't understand me. No, actually, you did not understand me. And then when that works, you have synergy. And synergy is that creative cooperation that goes beyond, I don't even, this is how people say we're so different, but we really get along.
Yeah.
That is synergy.
Yeah.
And that's winning the public victory. Now, the challenge for many of us is we want to win the public victory before we have really worked on the private victory.
Yeah.
We want to be good with people while inside we are messy.
Yeah.
We are untidy, as a friend of mine says.
So does it need to follow that order? You've only given 5, right? So there's 2 more.
That's 6.
There's 6. Oh, okay.
And then the 7th is
7th, okay.
sharpen the soul, and that's the one that makes everything possible. So it's how you renew yourself on a regular basis every day.
Is that by that do you mean like self-care?
Self-care. And it's in 4 dimensions: your mind, your body, your spirit. All those have to be working.
Yeah.
For you to really be able to give.
Yeah. And to pursue.
To pursue and participate.
Yeah, like
exactly.
The first one was like personal winning, or what?
Private victory.
Private victory,
Yes.
and then
Public victory. Yes.
And I love that, again, you talk about mind, body, spirit.
Spirit.
But
Oh,
even
will
with
come.
those
Yeah.
with those 3,
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we focus a lot on body,
Heart.
and
The 4th is
oh,
heart. Yes.
Oh,
yes,
beautiful.
yeah.
And we forget that there's these other the functions, spirit,
Exactly.
mind,
yeah,
heart,
yeah.
that also need to be
Nourished,
fed.
exactly.
Yeah, nourished, exactly. And replenished, so that you're able to go back into the world. And I also wish that corporates, a lot more corporates focused on that element. So, providing systems and putting systems in place that will allow you to go for mentorship or therapy or have a sabbatical where it's just like you're having family issues, deal with that.
Exhale.
Yeah, exhale.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, we have to take another quick break. When we come back, we'll get into personal relationships, drama, family, kids, and how to handle different personality types. We'll be back very shortly. Welcome back. We have been trying to understand the different personality types and how they affect how we interact with the world. And earlier we were talking about the professional space. Right now we're getting into the family space, the one that can drive people nuts, because you don't always pick your family, but that's what you're given, so you have to make it work.
Yeah.
So to start off, I want to know, is it important to understand someone else's personality type and make sure that you're able to give them what they need as much as it is to understand yours and allow yourself to have what you need as well?
Right. It is, and I always start with understanding you first, because you cannot give what you don't have. And so once you've spent time, you know, and that was, I think, your intro with Myers-Briggs, that it's not really about trying to box people. It's about self-awareness. And once you're self-aware, it's easy to have self-control. You know, so people don't push your buttons as easily, especially in the family, because like you say, the family tends to be emotive. It's like, oh my God, I can't.
They'll hit so low because
yes,
they know the buttons.
Exactly.
It's
they know
different.
everything.
Yeah.
You're like, you didn't
I
need
can't
to go
stand
there.
you.
Yes, exactly. That was just completely wrong.
Yeah.
And so the more self-aware you are, the more you know, whether it's your parents, you know, because sometimes your parents are the people you're like, I don't get them.
Yeah.
And when you start to get them, not that you suddenly are ooh happy tight.
Yeah.
It's just that I get where they're coming from.
Right.
A certain, you know, it's not always going to be a fight.
Yeah.
Starts to come forward. Same thing with your siblings. I mean, and this is the interesting thing, you know, talk about similar or diverse personalities in the workplace. Here you're genetically, you know, tied for the most part.
Yeah.
You know, so you're coming from the same gene pool, but you're still so different. You're nurtured the same, but you're still so different.
Yeah.
And then you go out into different environments and you'll hear people sometimes say, you guys are so different.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, we might look identical, but we really approach things very differently. And so how we take in what happens to us growing up will then be colored by different, you know, my sisters and I will sometimes have this weird conversation like, Mom liked you. No, she liked you better. No, I don't think she, you know, I'm like,
I think every
get up with
sibling
that?
has
Yeah,
that.
like,
I've had those conversations with my brother too.
yeah, like,
But
yeah.
maybe, but isn't it also normal that perhaps if you find in a family dynamic that two personality types gel better than the other two, that they will then forge relationships a
bond.
little easier?
Yes, they
and
do.
it's not to say it's a bad thing,
No.
is it?
No,
Yeah.
it isn't. I think the key thing is that they will forge those without ostracizing the other.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes the thing, that sometimes some members are so bonded that the others feel like they have no access to them. You know, they're in this own little world.
Okay.
You know, whether they're the siblings, sometimes it could be a cousin, you know, cousins that are really tight. It could be parents who
Yeah.
are tight with certain
Right.
kids and not others, because I see you, I understand you.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, that does lead to a lot of disharmony and a lot of tension. And sometimes if those issues don't get worked through in the process of growing up, they lead to difficult adult relationships and interactions.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so to understand them.
Yeah.
Now, I asked you this when we were talking about the
Yes.
professional space, but I want to know, in a romantic relationship, are there two personality types that cannot work together? Or maybe, you know, in the same, either they're too different or they're too similar.
They're too similar.
Yeah.
And again, opposites attract.
Is that true?
It is true.
Okay.
And it is true because I might see, I always say I tend to, you know, draw, not in romantic relationships, but like with my friends, I always go for people who I admire because they have that thing that I don't have. Now, maybe because of how much practice it's taken me as a coach, working on myself and taking time to understand myself, I no longer see those personalities as difficult or a threat, or I can kind of step back and see them for what they are and recognize what draws me to them.
Yeah.
And in the same way, I'm able to look at opposite relationships in terms of romantic relationships and start to see what is it that pulls this two people together.
Okay.
I remember in one training session where we were doing the insights profiling in a corporate setting, one lady came back the next morning and she was so excited because, you know, we saw what is it that you did with the learning from yesterday?
Yeah.
And she said, you know what, my husband and I will no longer fight. And I said, what happened? He says, you know, I like to solve things. And I realized he's not the problem. It's just that he does things differently.
Yeah.
He would rather wait and take time to consider and then make the decision that needs to be made. I want us to kind of go fast.
Yeah.
The battle has ended. And so those were
Okay.
people who really looked at things completely opposite
Yeah.
or different from
Yeah.
each other. But she had discovered knowing their personality is what enables us
Yeah.
to get along.
Right.
Now, the problem with romance is infatuation. And sometimes because of how, attracted we are to somebody, we tend to put on blinders around things that are already kind of niggling us.
Okay.
And there's probably proportions, if it's in 20% of only that, I can make it.
Yeah.
And then as you kind of get deeper into each other, you're like, oh my God, it is
I can't.
80%.
I can't.
Yes, yeah.
So in
yeah.
that case, then, were they toning it down? Were they toning it, whatever that personality trait was? And can you do that? Can you just learn to minimize? Maybe if you were a talker,
Yeah.
that you just learn to just talk less or share less.
Yes. And because we're driven by different motives.
Okay.
So if I really, I'm really set on getting a relationship to work,
Yeah.
I will sometimes subdue whatever my natural tendencies are to win that person over.
Okay.
It just is not sustainable.
Yeah.
So you kind of, we have this thing and it's us, I always say you can't blame the other person.
Yeah.
We have to look at ourselves and say, what was that about? And not in relation to what didn't I do that person wanted me to do, but what did I not do that I needed to do for me?
Right.
So that I was in better alignment with this individual.
Yeah.
So I find that because there's pressure, romantic relationships have a lot of social pressure.
Yes.
Maybe all your friends are now getting married, or,
Yeah.
and so this guy kind of smiles at you and you think, oh gosh, not
Husband
quite,
material,
but
but
yeah,
it's okay,
yeah,
we'll make it work. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, well, yeah, it's our beef.
Yeah.
We'll sort it, and then you realize, oh gosh,
It's actually not gonna work.
Really a big beef.
So
yeah.
do you think in a marriage
Yeah.
that you should sort of divide responsibilities based on your personality type or your strengths? And I mean that in the sense like maybe you handle finances, you handle discipline, you handle the relatives that we didn't want them to come over, but they are here, so you kick them out, things like, so should certain personality types be, can you divide responsibilities based on
I
that?
think it's important to negotiate even the divisions. So it is okay for one person to be the one who handles the money because they're good at maybe saving, etc.
Yeah.
Or budgeting, or keeping the
Yeah.
Excel spreadsheet, whatever.
Yeah.
But the key thing here is to make sure that you're in agreement
Yeah.
generally around how those finances are going to be managed. So you don't want the person who manages the finances and makes the other person wrong for, even going to, whatever, buy a tie or a pair of earrings, whoever it is
Yeah.
who's doing it. So there has to be that agreement that you're good at the finances, I struggle, this is how we're going to agree. What I find is many times, a friend of mine, I remember one time was telling me, hold me accountable to something. And then when I held her accountable, she got upset. And I'm like, so we need to just always remember
Yeah.
that some of the things I'm not strong at. So this is a real personality issue that we are discussing about. I might not be, very meticulous.
Yeah.
I don't want you to keep pointing out those weaknesses to me.
Right.
And the same way, I might not be in the mood to deal with the relatives today. So
Yeah.
you telling me, hey, those are your people.
Yeah.
I'll be like, I don't feel up to it today.
Yeah.
And you should not make me wrong about it. So that's where that navigation
Okay.
becomes a
Okay.
little tight.
Yeah.
Because then this is true personality typing.
Yeah.
Because it is about the things that I prefer to do and those that I don't prefer to do.
Yeah.
But just because I prefer to do one thing, I also don't want to be stuck in it. So it's such a weird dynamic, exactly. Yeah.
Earlier you were talking about how, even within a family, there are different personality types. I want to now get into the relationship between parents and children, and specifically maybe a parent who is one personality type, say that they are more introverted, they want to stay in the house and they just are meticulous, and their child, say a teen, is really out there, outgoing, wants to be social and surrounded by people.
Right.
How do you still create an environment that's conducive to them and that will allow their strengths to flourish while still, you know, being a parent and knowing that you're the one who's enforcing the rules, and if you're not careful, you could trap the child into, force them into becoming you. How do you navigate that?
You know, I think one of the things about parenting is none of us takes a class in it. You know, I think people need to take some classes or apply. You know, not all of us were made to be good parents. And again, if I'm lacking in self-awareness, my children end up being the product of my own insecurities, of my own unawareness, my challenges. They kind of get dumped onto children. And I'm always saying that there are times I want to ask parents to apologize to their children, because we are such a product of how we have been raised. And our parents, my mother always says, you know, I did the best with what I knew. And that is the truth. If they had known better, if she had known better, she may have done differently. And I think there's quite a few parents who operate from that perspective. So how do you, first recognizing, sometimes I think as parents, the older you get, the more you forget that you were once either a teenager or, and so you might end up creating these boundaries that just create an enmity between you and your child. And this is not just the teenage, that personality difference, you come home, your child is all eager to kind of play and interact, and that's your time, introverted you, where you want to
release and shut the world off.
So there has to be that consciousness that, I do owe this child some time. Then this is a responsibility I have as a parent. So I could come home and tell, my daughter, I'm sorry, sweetie, give mommy 1 hour to just so that she can be a better mommy for you. Versus just get out of here. I don't want to see you.
You're exhausted. I don't want to hear it.
Really. And the dynamic changes when you have many siblings, when you have many children, because then you're having different personalities. And this is where that thing of why can't you be like your sister?
Why and that's the worst. That's the worst.
Exactly.
That's the worst. Last question. How early can you start to tell someone's personality type? How early on?
Infancy.
Really? Infant? So like the babies, but how?
And this is the nature part, so it could be the way they cry. It could be the way they behave around people. It could be how much noise they guggle, at what volumes they do it. They'll have those kids who are just silent little cries. Oh, you can barely hear that. I mean, like ones. I am present.
And then that comes out more and more as the older that they get. You see how they interact with their little friends, play with the toys. Interesting. So you should be observant as a parent from very early on.
Very early. And when you start to see the differences, when you start to see a shift, start to pay attention to the environment. Because now that's why I said, you see the personality very early, and then you start to see what nurture does. And nurture is when that child, either with if you've got a house help, if you've got, the child goes to kindergarten, if so you now start to see how the environment starts to shape that personality.
So you really need to be involved in your child's life.
If your child has a tendency to extroversion, and then suddenly they're like,
pay attention and ask why. I love that. And I love that throughout all this, I think the main thing that came out to me is that you really need a a strong sense of self-awareness.
Yes.
What is your personality type?
Yes.
What is your strength?
Yes.
How bothered are you by the others, or how willing are you to allow
Yes.
the other people and their
Yes.
personality types to
Right.
affect yours?
Right.
I love that, and I hope that you watching learned something about yourself and about others, and that it'll help. This show will help you communicate a little bit better or understand other personality types. You may not be best friends immediately, but at least you'll know how to handle them. Thank you, thank you, Carol.
Thank you.
Now I want to wrap this off with our WCW, our lady that we have been watching and admire what you've been doing. Today we have Olivia Mengetich, who is the founder of Swahili Princess, a doll-making company that makes traditional African dolls to inspire young girls to embrace their skin color, different body types and shapes and hair textures, thus promoting the diversity in Black people, which we don't see a lot of. More often, the images that we're bombarded with is of a certain kind. So, thank you. Thank you so much for doing what you do and creating beautiful works of art that our daughters and our sons can identify with. We celebrate you today. Now, I think that's it. I'm going to have to say goodbye. But, by the way, I hope you're still following us on social media. And if you're not, you better just quickly pick up your phone. That's Living With Us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We'd love to hear your comments and hear your suggestions and who you'd love to see on the show as well. For now, though, you know the deal. I've got to say goodbye. Love you and leave you. See you tomorrow, 8 o'clock. Bye.